By the authority vested in me by the Senate of York University, I hereby confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Laws honoris causa, admitota ad gradum. Okay, congratulations.
Andy, the important piece.
Please don't worry, this is not my speech. Brevity is the soul of wit, Shakespeare said, and I'll certainly try to adhere to that. Chancellor McMurtry, President Shukri, faculty and staff, honored guests, graduates, congratulations, their families, and I congratulate you. I know what this day means to you, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I have an apology to make. I can't hope that every one of you has listened to me on the radio, but for those of you who do or have, and you're seeing my face writ large on these screens up here, I want to apologize for not looking the way I sound on the radio. I know you all entertain some better image of me than what I actually am, so you're all now allowed to sigh in disappointment. I can't tell you what an honor it is to be with you today and how much I will treasure the degree that you've awarded me. As I tell you some of my story in just a few minutes, perhaps you'll appreciate how astounding this moment is. And I have to also mention the academic street cred that this will confer upon me and my own family. My wife, Dr. Mary Barrie, earned her PhD in 1984 at the University of Toronto. Her doctoral dissertation, and I have it right here, variability, this is her doctorate, variability in learning style and its relationship to learning performance in introductory computer courses for adult learners. My other doctor in the house, our daughter Jessie, was awarded her PhD by the University of California in Santa Barbara in 2005. She submitted her dissertation. It is Adolescent Girls, Intermotivational Resources and Adventure Education, a Longitudinal Qualitative Study. Whoops. Hold on. Now, what have I done to earn this? I actually brought it with me. Good morning, it's 19 degrees outside. Thank you very much. Now, contained within that line are the brilliant powers of observation, the depths of insight, the inventive turn of phrase, refined over a 40-year career as a broadcaster that has brought me before you today. And as befits speeches of this kind, I would like to now tell you how I got here, in the hope that by following my example, you might too ascend to this great height. Of course, that last line, the way I delivered it, sounds like a setup for a joke, but in my few minutes with you this morning, I would seriously like to share a shred of advice that has helped me on my way and might help you on yours. It has to do with being a good listener. Not to others, although as an interviewer, that's been indispensable in my work. No, what I want to teach you to do for yourself is to listen to your own instincts. My instinct is to try to move this aside. What do I mean here by instinct, or by a better word, intuition? There have been many attempts to define intuition, but what works for me is the things we know without knowing how we know them. This is very different from the knowledge that earns you your own degrees. If you know that Shakespeare wrote Hamlet, you probably know exactly where and how you learned that. But the very essence of intuition, Charles Darwin said, is that we follow it independent of reason. In the course of your life, a lot of people are going to tell you to be reasonable. When you know that absolutely the only thing is to be unreasonable, and that will, for you, be what's right. That will be your intuition speaking, what the Quakers call the still small voice. Now, when the Quakers are talking about the still small voice, they're usually talking about the spark of divinity within each of us, and they hope that attending to that still small voice will allow you to treat others well. But I would like to ask you to listen to that still small voice that speaks, if I could put it that way, to your own enlightened self-interest, the small voice that tells you what's best for you. I must have been listening when I abandoned my ambition to be an actor and switched to radio instead. In high school, I'd been a star in school plays, one of those big fish in a small pond. It took me about 3 failed auditions in university to realize that the stage could live without me. So I swapped the stage for the studio, where, by the way, I didn't have to look like Brad Pitt in order to succeed. My roommate, meanwhile, a guy named Jerry Zaks, listening to his still small voice, dropped out of pre-med. He was supposed to be a doctor, took my place in a drama major, and went on to win 4 Tony Awards on Broadway. While Jerry was going off to New York, I was taking the first step in my career. I'd been offered what I was told was a great gig at CBS News in New York, in the same newsroom where a man named Walter Cronkite worked. You may not know him, but your parents will probably recall this was a seriously plum job. But my instinct told me that as a beginner, I'd be making lots of mistakes, and it would be better to make them where relatively few people could hear them. So I joined the staff of a tiny 500-watt radio station. They had a staff of about 16 people, and I knew that I'd have a crack at every job in that station over time. Whereas at CBS, I'd be a very small cog in a very large wheel. That 500-watter lasted about 5 months. Once I learned everything it could teach me, I moved on. Next stop was 10,000 watts. And 6 months later, a 50,000-watt job in Washington, D.C. But it was an even bigger outfit in Washington, a place called the Pentagon, that was to put reason versus intuition to its greatest test in my life. I was drafted into the Army, and a year later I was ordered to Vietnam. This is a whole story in itself, but I will simply say that my still small voice was singing a song by Buffy St. Marie called Universal Soldier, when on December 23rd, 1969, on the day that I was supposed to report to duty in Saigon, I drove my car across the Darby Line, Vermont border station and entered Canada. Thank you. All the reasonable people in my life said I was destroying that life. Nothing good could come of being a deserter, they told me. I'd be a pariah for the rest of my life. My instincts did not agree, and this wasn't just an instinct for survival. It was about, as Hamlet put it, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night does the day, that thou canst not be false to any man, including the men and women in Vietnam in whose wholesale death I wanted no part. So here I was, a stranger in Canada, a stranger in a strange land, and yet miraculously, from the first moment I stepped foot in Montreal, I felt completely at home. I don't know if you've ever heard the line about being homesick for a place you've never been. It was as if all my life I'd been a Canadian locked in the body of an American. Of course, I'd been paying attention. If I'd been paying attention, I would have noticed that my still small voice was telling me to get out and not out of the United States.